Hi, everyone. I'm Mary Reed,
And I'm Lisa Dewey.
and we want to welcome you to our course, Shedding the False I, Returning to the Radiance of Your True Self. Lisa and I wanted to offer this course because, in a world where pretty much everybody deeply yearns to be connected to and grounded in that sense of true self, our divine essence, we wanted to give a course that can reveal the illusory structures that give rise to that personal identity, that thing that is doing the yearning. And those illusory structures are the various layers of the false self that sustains the sense of separation. So we're really excited to be able to offer this, and you'll hear in a minute how we're offering this from personal experience. And each week we're going to go through the eight sort of key layers of the false identity, and each session will include first a teaching transmission, which will go on for about 25 to 30 minutes. Today's is going to be a little longer because we're going to give some background and context. And then we're going to offer some integrative reflection prompts, which we can utilize journaling and embodied inquiry. And then we're going to do some practices for recognition and disillusion so that we can sort of amplify the transmission that we're offering here. And then every session is going to close with a guided awareness meditation, which will take about 15 to 20 minutes. And we'll just sort of let everything sink in or soak in as we end on that note. And all participants will also receive access to periodic Q&As that Lisa and I will offer. And so be sure to make note of questions along the way if you have them. And then everybody will also get access to the course community forums, so participants can talk with each other, share experiences, and that sort of thing.
What we aim for you to experience is clear recognition of the multiple layers of false identity active in the human experience, in-depth understanding of how aspects of each layer shape our behavior and self-beliefs, realization of how each layer is unknowingly sustained, paths to dissolution of the false identity, practices for acclimating to living as true self. Now, the only tools you'll need for this course are a journal and time to sincerely engage in self-observation and reflection. While we move through the 8 various layers of false identity sequentially, we actually explore them relationally. We allow recognition to unfold organically according to each participant's readiness.
Now, we need to take a minute to introduce ourselves so you know who is giving you this information. Lisa and I actually met 12 years ago in a tiny little Buddhist nunnery in the Himalayas. So we've been friends for a long time. We've been on a very unique and special spiritual journey together, and I write about that a couple of times. I've spoken about it often, how we know each other first in spirit and then in physical form. So we've just really begun working together. We've been wanting to do this for a long time. We started working together last year doing retreats. We did 4 retreats, including 2 in India with groups. And this is our first course that we're able to offer, and we're very excited to do this. Now, we met in the nunnery while I was sort of acclimating to exactly what we're talking about in this course, letting all of that false identity fall away. 26 years ago, I was really wrapped up in all of that identity as a healthcare executive living in Washington, D.C., doing clinical research, mostly in respiratory medicine and AIDS. And I began to have these really profound metaphysical experiences then that really challenged my sense of identity. Who am I? What am I doing? What is all of this? And after about 10 years of great confusion, finally all my normal false identity really started to fall away. And that's how I ended up living in the Buddhist nunnery, where everything started to come to light. And there was really a lot of that various shedding. But my journey to really truly shedding all these various false identity layers was about 20 years. And so that's representative of how most people really go about the shedding of these things that just don't feel right. We can tell that we're putting on kind of a personality pretense. But Lisa's journey was very different. Hers was much more acute. So I'll let her share that.
For more than 14 years, I experienced profound mystical openings, moments of union with the divine, glimpses of other realms, and periods of deep unitive consciousness. And during those years, certain aspects of the self softened and fell away, yet the core sense of personal identity remained, still organizing around me. Then, nearly 2 years ago, while riding in a car, I turned to the side window to check my reflection and discovered there was no reflection of me, only the world moving effortlessly through form. And in that instant, identity, vanity, the sense of being a separate individual, all were revealed as illusions. That night, a powerful current of divine love carried me into what felt like a vast energy vortex. For hours, layers of the I identity peeled away, one after the other, each one revealing subtle ways separation and otherness had been maintained and reinforced. What remained was not a person having an experience, but consciousness awakening to itself. And by morning, it was seen that the face in the mirror was not me, but consciousness reflecting consciousness through consciousness, still, infinite, and free. Since then, the unfolding has continued in quiet simplicity, with experience arising and subsiding within the open field of presence. There's no longer a center around which experience turns, only the seamless flow of awareness being itself. So in this course, what is shared comes directly from this realization, from the lived recognition that the personal story was never the truth of what we are. Together, we'll explore how the layers of identity naturally dissolve, how to meet this process with genuine openness, and how to rest as the radiant clarity of the divine being we are.
Well said, beautifully said. So you can see we have very different experiences that we're basing all of this on. And as we go along, we're going to try to keep this personally engaging, but we actually have to read most of the information because there's so many specific nuances to share. And I just want to acknowledge that what we're about to convey here, what we're going to be reading for you, is written by Lisa, and it's based on sort of from the field experience. So you might imagine speaking from within the field about the field experience or the presence internally inside of Source. So it's eloquent and beautifully stated. So I just want to acknowledge Lisa's beautiful work on that. Now, we want to begin by reiterating that there's nothing wrong with the false identity layers that we've lived through. We developed these early on primarily through conditioning and as ways to cope with the confusing world. But as these crystallized into self-concept, we lost embodied awareness of our true self-essence. But we didn't do anything wrong by becoming these characters. In truth, these identities were never mistakes. They were expressions of consciousness exploring itself through form. Each character, the parent, the professional, the friend, the healer, the seeker, the helper, has served a purpose. These roles allowed being to move through experience, through various lenses, to taste the full spectrum of human life. They became the vehicles through which consciousness learned compassion and strength and vulnerability and discernment, among a million other things. But our struggles only arise when we take these identities to be who we truly are, rather than temporary expressions. We begin to defend them, polish them, or fear their loss. We get lost in the performance and mistake the costume for the one wearing the costume. But awakening doesn't condemn the character. It simply reveals that the actor was never limited to any role. When the grip of this identification loosens, what remains is appreciation. We can honor the character identities as sacred explorations of consciousness, stories through which the infinite learned to speak, love, and remember itself.
The various layers are not distinct. They overlap and are interdependent. These are not separate expressions of consciousness. They interpenetrate like threads in a single tapestry. Each layer influences and sustains the others. For example, the seeker layer may believe awakening is something to attain, which activates the doer layer to strive and control the process. When progress feels slow, the judge layer arises, comparing or criticizing the self, while the image layer steps in to maintain the appearance of being spiritual or evolved. Each layer reinforces the others, all anchored in the same illusion that awakening belongs to someone who must earn it. Understanding this interdependence helps dissolve the illusion of hierarchy or separation among layers. There isn't one single layer to fix or remove. When awareness illuminates one aspect, a belief, a reaction, a sensation, the others naturally begin to reveal themselves. Now, awakening doesn't dissolve false identity in neat stages. It's a fluid, interconnected process in which different aspects of self loosen at the same time. Each layer relaxes as true awareness becomes more fully present throughout the whole structure of being. Ultimately, we see there were never separate layers, only different densities of the same field of consciousness, recognizing its inherent wholeness.
Beautiful. Now, with that background, let's settle in and let's start this journey going through the layers. So we invite you just to feel what we're acknowledging here, what we're honoring here, what we're helping to recognize in all participants. So we'll begin this first session with the image layer, our social mask. The image layer is the social costume of being someone. It feeds on recognition, how you appear to others, how you're received, how your reflection confirms existence. The image layer is woven from subtle fear that without an image, there would be nothing. The image layer contracts pure being into image of being. The moment we try to look good or look right or appropriate or worthy, we leave the intimacy of direct experience of true self. From the unitive perspective, being is not something one has. It's what is. It is awareness before form, before self-concept, before perception divides the seamless field of existence into me and that. Pure being has no subject or object. It is not aware of something. It is simply awareness itself. In this, there's no image, no boundary, no reflection, only presence aware of itself as presence.
The image layer of identity arises the moment consciousness turns toward itself and says, "This is me." In that single gesture, the indivisible field of awareness appears to separate into subject and object, perceiver and perceived. Through this imagined division, the experience of individuality begins to take shape. This reflective dimension of mind constructs a self-portrait and then mistakes that self-portrait for the living reality. Every gesture, every thought about how we might be seen or understood gives form to the imagined self taking shape within awareness. The image layer functions as the interface through which the personal I strives to sustain its continuity, polishing, adjusting, defending the self it believes itself to be. This structure is more nuanced than mere appearance. It is composed not only of visual self-images, but also of memories, roles, opinions, histories, expectations, and self-concepts, each serving as a reflective surface through which pure being appears as a person, an identity, or a story. And within this hall of mirrors, awareness becomes entranced by its own reflection. Mistaking representation for reality. The vastness of pure being seems to contract into an image of being, into the narrow frame of me, and the intimacy of direct experience becomes filtered through the narrative of identity.
Now, what Lisa just conveyed there is a very important part of this course. It's a very important part of understanding the image layer and the nuances of how reflection is playing a part here. So, I'm going to reiterate, the structure is more nuanced than mere appearance. It's not composed only of visual self-images, but also of, memories and roles and histories, etc. Each serving as a reflective surface through which being appears as a person, an identity, a story. And that's what she's referring to as the Hall of Mirrors. It's such a beautiful way to understand that. So let's take a moment here and just pause. And we'll pick back up. Now, the paradox is that the moment we try to look good, to appear right or worthy or lovable, we step out of the immediacy of life and into the image of ourselves living life. Instead of being experience, we begin thinking ourselves into experience. The directness of presence is replaced by self-reflection. We move from the felt reality of I am to the imagined reality of I am this. Now, this subtle shift fragments the unity of awareness. We turn from life as it is happening to an internal mirror, monitoring how we appear to others, to the world, even to ourselves. The intimacy then of direct experience, the immediacy of simply being, gives way to performance, to the management of an image that can never be satisfied because it isn't real. This is the seed of all self-concern and self-conceit. The effort to look good, to hold an image together, is the very motion that conceals the undivided wholeness beneath it. Awareness, in trying to become something, forgets that it is already everything.
In the moment when the reflection in the car window revealed there was no trace of me, an entire structure of subtle self-maintenance came into view and then completely collapsed. What I had long called vanity was not just a preference for appearance. It was a much deeper investment in the image of being someone at all. Vanity operates not only at the level of how one looks, but as a constant effort to appear as something, to oneself, to others, even to the imagined gaze of the world. From within that quiet awareness, free from any sense of self, the absurdity of vanity became clear, not as something to judge, but as something that once served a purpose. Vanity is simply consciousness exploring form, trying on faces until it recognizes that none are needed.
As you said, trying on faces, I was thinking about you and all of your various hats. It has a big hat collection. So consciousness trying on all these hats.
Consciousness has an obsession with fedoras.
Okay, now let's look at the subtle ways we construct someone to be seen. The construction of self-image doesn't only occur through deliberate self-presentation. It unfolds in the smallest gestures, in tone, in language, expression, emotional regulation, each one quietly shaping the someone we believe ourselves to be. These micro-adjustments are the mechanics of the image layer in motion. They reveal how awareness reflexively arranges itself into form in order to be mirrored back. So, for example, our tone of voice. Notice how the tone of your voice is never quite fixed. It softens when you want to appear kind. It brightens when you want to seem enthusiastic. It becomes more polished or precise in professional settings, and turns tender or playful among friends. Each shift subtly builds a contour of identity. I love how Lisa said that. Each shift subtly builds a contour of identity that is so perfect. The kind person, the capable colleague, the wise seeker, the warm friend. The voice becomes a brush of energy painting the outline of me. Again, such a gorgeous way to say that. For example, we will speak in a calm, measured way during a disagreement, not to stay present, but to appear composed. Or we raise our voice slightly with authority figures to sound more competent or agreeable. Or we lower or soften our tone with someone that we find intimidating, hoping to seem likable or non-threatening. Every modulation of the tone of our voice reflects an inner orientation towards being seen rather than simply being.
Another way we subtly construct someone to be seen is through our choice of words. Language is the architecture of persona. Words are not just tools of communication, they are tools of self-creation. We choose them to shape how we appear in the minds of others. We reach for what sounds wise, sensitive, or confident, depending on our audience. The mind subtly asks, how will this make me sound? And in that question, the living immediacy of speech is replaced by the construction of identity. Some examples include quoting teachers or texts to sound insightful rather than expressing what is authentically seen, adopting professional jargon to appear competent or in the know, or using poetic or spiritual language to maintain an image of depth or enlightenment. The words are chosen not only to convey meaning, but to maintain a certain image, the me we hope others will perceive.
Another way we construct that image is through our facial expressions. The face, too, becomes a canvas for identity. We hold expressions not just to mirror emotion, but to project who we think we are and who we want to be seen as. A practiced smile can signal approachability. A serene, untroubled face can signal spiritual maturity. A furrowed brow might signal seriousness or care. But behind each expression is often a small contraction, the effort to hold an image in place. For example, smiling through discomfort to avoid being seen as difficult or unkind. Maintaining a calm, pleasant expression even when agitation or sadness is present. Adopting an expression of deep listening or empathy to reinforce being a good friend or the compassionate one. The face becomes both mirror and mask, translating the living flux of emotions into something socially coherent.
Perhaps the most subtle construction of someone happens in the invisible realm of emotion through emotional filtering. We edit, withhold, or amplify feeling to align with the identity we want to embody. We suppress anger to stay peaceful. We hide sadness to stay strong. We exaggerate enthusiasm to seem engaged. In each case, raw experience is filtered through the image layer's expectation of who we should be. Some examples include feeling irritation, but instantly reframing it as teaching patience. Stifling tears in public because the role of leader or teacher must appear composed.
That's not me.
Not you. You cry beautifully in public.
I'm a big crybaby.
Or also displaying excessive optimism when uncertainty or vulnerability feels unsafe to show. Every filtered emotion reinforces the belief that authenticity must be managed, that the natural flow of feeling must be edited to fit the character we play.
When we see through the subtle construction, when all these patterns are seen clearly, not judged, but noticed, something loosens. Awareness recognizes that these adjustments, while deeply human, are not who we are. They are the reflexes of consciousness attempting to shape its reflection. As attention relaxes out of self-management, voice, language, expression, and feeling begin to move again from the unfiltered flow of being. Communication becomes spontaneous, uncontrived, and alive. Not a performance, but participation. That's such a beautiful noticing of that difference. Not a performance, but participation. So let's pause for a moment here. And let's just feel inward. And we'll pick back up.
Now let's look at how the image layer maintains separation consciousness. The image layer sustains the illusion of individuality by keeping awareness identified with its reflection rather than its source. It is the mechanism through which the seamless field of being divides into me and you, subject and object. When we believe we exist as an image, we need the reflection of others to confirm it. An image has no life of its own. It depends on a mirror. When identity is rooted in appearance, in how we are seen, remembered, or validated, others become the reflective surfaces that sustain the sense of me. Every interaction then becomes a quiet negotiation for confirmation. Do you see me as kind, competent, attractive, enlightened? This dependency binds our awareness to constant comparison and evaluation. It is not so much relationship, but reflection management. The attempt to stabilize a fragile self-image through the response of others. Some examples include feeling uneasy when someone doesn't respond warmly, interpreting it as personal rejection. Needing affirmation after helping others to confirm we're a good person. Carefully curating social media posts or conversations to maintain an image of insight, success, or balance. Discomfort when not being acknowledged in a group, as if invisibility equals non-existence. Each of these is the image layer seeking itself in the mirror of another, a hall of reflections that never resolves into wholeness.
Managing impressions reinforces the illusion of me and them. The act of impression management, such a great term, impression management, is the engine of duality. To manage how we appear, we must first imagine ourselves as separate, someone distinct who can be perceived by someone else. The more energy poured into sustaining this image, the stronger the sense of boundary becomes. Every time we adjust tone, gesture, or expression to shape perception, we are unconsciously affirming difference. We reinforce the invisible wall between performer and the audience. We had to do a little edit in this video here because Lisa was just mentioning that when I said impression management, she could see it on somebody's Indeed resume thing, like impression management, really good at impression management. To continue, some examples of this are speaking differently to those of perceived higher status to appear capable, or to those perceived as vulnerable to appear compassionate. Or withholding genuine reactions because they might disturb another's perception of you. Or rehearsing conversations in your head. We all know this one. Rehearsing conversations in your head before meeting someone, creating a version of yourself to present. Or performing calmness or spiritual insight when actually feeling confusion, simply to preserve the role of the one who knows. In these subtle movements, the living unity of being fractures into roles. Connection becomes conditional, dependent on how well we can sustain the mask.
The image layer hides vulnerability, any aspect that doesn't fit the persona. This layer survives by editing reality. It allows only what supports the persona to be seen and suppresses everything that threatens it. Fear, doubt, grief, insecurity, need. These uncurated aspects of being are exiled to protect the identity's illusion of wholeness. But what is kept hidden doesn't disappear. It becomes the unseen weight that keeps separation intact. Some examples include smiling and saying, "I'm fine," when inwardly collapsing. Avoiding expressing affection or neediness to maintain the image of independence. Downplaying moments of confusion or fear to keep the appearance of confidence. Holding back tears during a spiritual or emotional opening because the strong one shouldn't cry. In protecting the image, we isolate the heart. The very intimacy we long for is lost in the effort to seem whole.
That's such a beautiful and profound truth. In protecting our self-image, we isolate our heart. The very intimacy we deeply long for is lost in our effort to seem whole. That's very poignant and well said. We can feel the impulse to defend our image layer in our body. When criticized or misunderstood, the image layer leaps to protect itself. The body tightens, breath shortens, and the mind insists, "That's not who I am." What is being defended is not the living truth of being, but the reflection we've built, the image of who we think we are. Some examples are, when a colleague questions your decision and your body immediately braces before the mind begins explaining. Or a loved one or even a stranger points out a flaw and the reflex to clarify, defend, or retreat arises before reflection. What we feel physically or energetically we sense is a contraction in the solar plexus, literally that gut feeling, a tightening in the throat, or a sense of a protective barrier forming between you and the other person. You can feel that wall come up very distinctly. Or a sudden rush of heat or energy or rigidity that sets in, the energetic signature there of separation returning. So what we feel emotionally then is, of course, embarrassment or shame or the urgent need to explain or justify. We feel unseen or misrepresented, as if our existence, our very existence, has been threatened. Each of these defense reactions in the body is the image layer guarding its reflection, mistaking critique of behavior for negation of being.
Let's talk about seeing through the reflection phenomenon that sustains the false separate I identity. The image layer sustains separation through dependency, management, and concealment. It seeks reflection from others to confirm its existence. It polishes its performance to maintain control and hides anything that contradicts its chosen form. But all of this rests on a false premise that we are the image. When this illusion softens, the need for reflection dissolves. Vulnerability is no longer a threat, but a portal. The place where the mirror shatters and awareness meets itself directly.
Again, such a beautiful way to convey these things, Lisa. When the image layer dissolves, all performative movement stops. the body relaxes, expression becomes spontaneous and no longer strategic. You no longer present yourself to the world presents itself through you. In the absence of image, beauty is no longer owned or manufactured. Presence itself becomes that beauty and that radiance. So let's take a moment here and just pause. And we'll pick back up. Throughout our lives, the moment we stepped outside of direct experience to manage how we appeared, we traded aliveness for image. We ceased to be and began to perform. But to reiterate, this paradox was not a mistake. It was how consciousness learned to see itself, to experience itself through form. But now, when the weariness of performance arises, when the seeking finally softens, we naturally turn back to the intimacy we never truly left. In that return, experience is no longer mediated through self-concept. Existence becomes direct and unfiltered. Awareness recognizes itself as both the seer and the seen, the mirror and the reflection, all one.
Now we're going to talk about recognizing the patterns that continually construct our false identity and give you some reflection prompts to help you notice them. The purpose of noticing the patterns is not to stop these movements, but to see them clearly in real time. Each moment of self-monitoring, defensiveness, or performance is an invitation. It's a doorway through which awareness can return to immediacy. When the need to manage how we are seen relaxes, the body softens, breath deepens, and the heart opens, what remains is simple presence, the intimacy of being unfiltered by image.
Okay, so we're going to offer 7 reflection prompts. These are questions for contemplation. You can journal your answer or simply feel what arises for you. The first of these is, where in my life do I most feel the need to be seen or approved of?
The next one is, what emotions arise when I imagine not being recognized, praised, or validated?
The third is, notice a time today when you subtly performed for others. What do you recognize as the underlying fear?
Right from the felt sense, what remains when I stop managing how I am perceived? How does the body feel when I stop performing, even for a moment?
The next prompt is, who am I without the mirror of others? Now, this is related to the self-inquiry that you've probably heard other teachers talk about. Ramana Maharshi was very famous with the self-inquiry, who am I? But specifically here, we're talking about Who am I without the mirror of others, without that validation or confirmation coming back in the reflection?
The next prompt is, what remains constant when I am not performing any version of myself? And what we're talking about here is what feels eternal, what feels authentic, what feels like your true essence.
That which never changes. And the last prompt here is, how does life move when there's no me image to uphold? When I just simply am all that I am?
We're going to give you some practices to help recognize and soften the image layer as we shed the false I identity. The first one is practice awareness and conversation. During the week, notice micro moments of performance, adjusting tone, posture, or words. Instead of correcting them, simply see them as the image layer in motion. Just notice them.
The second practice is the mirror practice. So just spend 1 minute each morning looking into the mirror silently. Meet that reflection without judgment until the sense of someone looking begins to relax.
After awakening, I used to stand in front of the mirror just marveling at the complete lack of personal identity and the wonder of consciousness beholding consciousness through consciousness.
So in this process, we're relaxing the presentation of an image or the idea that there's an individual projecting here.
The next one is allow the world to look through you rather than at you. Now, when I walk through the world, it's intimacy without self-reference. Sounds, faces, colors, sensations all move freely through awareness without sticking to a someone. The world is not experienced as subject and object, observer or an observed. There is only the seamless exchange of perception within itself. Awareness, recognizing awareness everywhere.
Gorgeous. And now I'm going to offer our final practice here. And it's going to be a meditation, a meeting the mask awareness meditation. But we're actually going to end then on this note. So we're going to end with everybody in sort of this deep meditative state, taking everything in. So we want to take this opportunity to thank you for participating with us to this point. And thank you, Lisa, for all of your beautiful articulating of everything so eloquently and insightfully.
Thank you, Mara. And thank you to all of you for being here. We love you. We love you. We love you.
Beautiful. All right. Let's take a moment now to just get ourselves into a beautiful, relaxed, receiving state. We're going to soak everything in. And let's take a nice, good, slow, deep breath in. And as you breathe out, just feel that beautiful movement of the breath without any effort, settling through the body, relaxing everything, opening us up. Notice that you don't have to do anything to ensure there is a breath. The breath is happening there is awareness of breath. If we step outside the language of someone who is breathing, and just allow the being in this moment, that breath is happening. Take another good deep breath in, please. And again, just feel it. Feel the movement, feel the flow that is happening without you having to force it, without you having to do it, without it being right or wrong, good or bad. There's just breath. Now, we want to use this method of an awareness practice to simply meet the mask, or an aspect of the mask, of the image layer. And we'll use something very simple. Just recall a situation, any situation at any time, where you wanted to make a good impression. Notice what happens in the body as any memory arises. Did you notice any tension or something similar? Any emotion? Any resistance? Any fear? Notice in the memory that you may have felt or feel a sense of kind of leaning forward, subtly trying to be seen in a certain way, in that good impression way. Notice also the posture of presentation. There is a way that we shift our sense of presenting when we want to make a particular impression. or when we have a defensiveness. Now, as you notice what is happening in the body with the memory, with the sensations that arise with this, then gently ask yourself, what is it that I think I'm protecting? By needing this good impression to be seen in a particular way. Now, we don't need to analyze the answer to our question. We're simply acknowledging what we recognize that we may be protecting. Part of that image layer. We don't need to do anything with it. This is simply the acknowledging, the meeting of this aspect of the mask. And after we have a sense of what we are protecting, or may be protecting, or the idea that we think we're protecting, we can ask the question, what would happen if I let them see me? Just in the most vulnerable, authentic way. Now again, we don't need to analyze. We just be aware of the sensations that arise. Just feel the sense of what happens when we answer that question. What would happen if I really let them see me? Continue to just let that feeling soften deeper and deeper into the body. Now, in a deeply self-compassionate, sincere way. Whisper inwardly, "In this moment, I do not need to be any particular image. I am as I am." Allow the breath to really let that whispered comment permeate. In this moment, I do not need to be any particular image. I am as I am. Feel the naturalness of simply being unperformed. Just rest in this flow, allowing the body to recalibrate on its own to the ease of simply being.